Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Mesa City Council meeting for May 2nd, 2022. As you can see, the mayor is absent, as well as Councilmember Spilsbury. They're unable to attend tonight, and they are excused, and all the other members of our council are present. We will begin our meeting with an invocation by Reverend Dr. Rula Colvin with Red Mountain United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Hear this prayer. Loving God, we are grateful for our time together this evening, and we ask your blessing on those who have been called to lead the community in which we live and work and play. Remind them that they are not only leaders, but also servants, and that it is their responsibility to serve the common good of all. Remind them, too, that throughout the ages, leaders of the people have been called to respect and protect the least of those among us, our children, the elderly, the poor, those who are hungry, those who have no homes, those who are ill in body, mind, or spirit, the strangers and immigrants in our midst, and those who live on the margins, those who are alone, and those who are forgotten. So we ask that you grant them the wisdom to speak out when it is time to speak out, and the wisdom to listen patiently and receptively when it is time to listen. Keep them healthy, safe, and rested so they may be able to be effective in their work. We ask that you place in them a spirit of unity so that they may work toward a shared vision rather than working as individuals promoting their own agendas. Let disagreements be on content and not on personality conflicts or power plays. And we ask that they might be able to resolve their disputes gracefully. Give them the courage to follow noble aspirations, the strength to support worthy causes, the integrity to seek justice, and in all their civic duties, we ask, O God, that you be their inspiration and guide. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have some blue cards for item 6A, a zoning case 081-ZON-21-00940. Mr. Christopher, if you could read everything else on the agenda for consent, and then we'll address 6A. Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. These are the items on the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk will be considered as a group by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless a council member or citizen requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. Item 2, approval of minutes of previous meetings is written. Item 3A, act on liquor license application for Operation Restoring Veteran Hope, one-day event, May 21st, 922 South Country Club Drive. Item 4A, act on dollar limit increase to the term contract for contractor building maintenance services as requested by the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department. Item 4B, act on 3-year term contract with 2 years of renewal options for aquatic maintenance parts for the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department. Item 4C, act on contract to purchase new employee onboarding software for the Human Resources Department as requested by the Office of ERP Management. Item 4D, act on 4-month contract extension and dollar limit increase to the term contract for centrifuge parts and services for the Water Resources Department. Item 4E, act on 3-year term contract with 2 years of renewal options for mechanical fittings for the Materials and Supply Warehouse for the Energy Resources Department. Item 4F, act on contract for Monterey Park expansion, construction manager at risk, guaranteed maximum price number 1. This project's funded by 2018 general obligation bonds and capital general funds. Item 5A, act on resolution extinguishing a drainage easement and drainage covenant located at 3745 South Power Road. Item 5B, act on resolution extinguishing a portion of a 20-foot public utility easement and public utilities and facilities easement located at 1506 South Signal Butte Road. Item 5C, act on a resolution extinguishing a portion of a 20-foot public utility easement and public utilities and facilities easement, a temporary drainage easement, and a portion of a 10-foot drainage easement, all located at 1458 South Signal Butte Road. Item 5D, act on resolution extinguishing a portion of a 20-foot public utility easement and public utilities and facilities easement located at 1558 South Signal Butte Road. Item 5E, act on resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County for deployment of traffic signal devices along Power Road and Sossman Road between the Loop 202 Santan Freeway and ASU Polytechnic Campus Innovation Way. Item 5F, act on resolution endorsing creation of the Fillmore Place Irrigation Water Delivery District, generally bound by East Keno Drive in the north, East 7th Place in the south, North Mesa Drive in the west, and North Horn in the east. Final designation of the district is determined by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. Item 6A has been removed from the consent agenda. Item 6B, introduction of ordinance regarding ZON 21-01126 for property located north of Elliott Road on the west side of Signal Butte Road. Rezone with plan area development overlay and site plan review to allow for an industrial development. Item 6C, introduction of ordinance amending Article 6, Section 609 of the Mesa City Charter relating to certain requirements for city procurements, subject to the approval of the amendment of the qualified electors of the city of Mesa. Item 6D, introduction of ordinance amending Article 2, Section 205D of the Mesa City Charter to allow a meet and confer process and memorandum of understanding with sworn public safety employee organizations, subject to the approval of the amendment by the qualified electors of the city of Mesa. Item 7A, act on ordinance regarding ZON 21-00435 for property located east of Greenfield Road on the north side of Baseline Road. Site plan modification for a multi-tenant retail building with a drive-through. Item 7B, act on ordinance regarding ZON 21-00921 for property located north of Southern Avenue and east of Crisman Road. Rezone with a planned area development overlay and site plan review to allow for multiple residence development. And item 7C, act on ordinance regarding ZON 21-01024 for property located south of Pecos Road on the east side of the Haas Road alignment. Rezone with a planned area development overlay and site plan review to allow for an industrial development. Vice Mayor and council members, these are the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher. We have a motion by Councilmember Freeman and a second by Councilmember Thompson. Please vote. And that passes unanimously with the mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury absent. So the item off of the consent agenda is item 6A, which is for a ZON 21-00940 within the 3100 block of East Southern Avenue and the 1200 block of South 32nd Street. And it's a rezone from the single residence 9 to the multiple residence 3 with a planned area development overlay and site plan review. This is the introduction only. It is not the final vote, which will be on May 16th. We do have some blue cards, and the first blue card I have is for Mr. Robert Jarvis. If you'd like to come forward and do. Welcome, Mr. Jarvis.
Is it afternoon, good afternoon, or good evening?
I don't know,
One
it
of the
seems like
two.
afternoon, but it is
Kind of crosses
evening.
over.
Thank you, it is
Well,
evening.
We appreciate your time, council, and Vice Mayor as well. This is an issue where the neighborhood has really come together on this. We have 396 signatures that were on the petition. There was a committee formed. I'm part of that committee that represent the majority of, well, probably much more of a majority of the neighborhood because we found out about this process in a very unusual way, and it has gone through a very unusual process. I'm not here necessarily to discuss that process, although we do believe that needs to be addressed and fixed because of the way that it was happening. We'll love to discuss that with the council at some point or individually, however that may be. What we'd like to do is address the information that has been provided. We have been in contact with the developers. We have been negotiating and doing all we can regarding that. And they have been open to it, and there have been a number of changes regarding it. We listened, or I watched the study session. There were a few things that we want to clarify regarding that. And speaking with one of the members of the developers, the garage, the F-150 issue, right? I mean, it was kind of interesting. That's how it came. It's become the F-150. 250. Well, that's even bigger. So anyway, as the council knows from the materials that has been provided, we do want this area developed. It's been an eyesore for a long time, and we do want development. We want the development to meet the neighborhood and to be integrated into the neighborhood. Part of that was the density issue. It was 40, it's been down to 36. Initially, we said, okay, that's as a compromise, but when you look at it, we would like the density to be lower. If you go up the street on 32nd Street and Broadway, a newer development that was just finished recently, the density is actually 12 units per acre. The proposed 36 on this acreage is 18 per acre, which is a much higher density than it needs to be. Although, again, we address, and when we spoke with the developers, we initially thought, okay, 36 would be, well, it's better than 40. But that is a concern that we have. Part of that then was the garage, or let me start with the setbacks from the edges. The problem was the pad that was placed on this that was approved, because that pad just took every inch it could. It moved the distance between buildings from, I think, what was it, 10? It moved it, the distance between buildings to from 30 feet to 24, and it just tightened everything out and just kind of ballooned everything out as much as possible. And that was one of the biggest concerns. The developers, and when working with them, one of the best things they've done is went from 4 parking spaces now to 36. And we appreciate that. We recognize that as a big deal. One of the misconceptions with the parking, though, was it will be needed as far as the good neighbor policy, one of the things that needs to be in the CC&Rs, and we propose that a private agreement be made between the neighborhood and the HOA or development, that be put in place as well regarding the good neighbor policy and the issues there. The main one being the garage. And speaking with one of the developers, they've indicated that the garage will be bigger, that it will fit a truck. Now, it went from 22 feet as the minimum requirement to 20 feet on the pad. And there's just no way that any vehicle, except for a little, sedan, will fit in there. And the problem with that is the overflow. And so part of this good neighbor policy we're asking for is that whoever is leasing the property or renting that property, that part of that lease is that they have to park in the garage. There's not, and that was one of the things that was in the study session that was misunderstood, I think, is that they can't park that extra vehicle out on those 36. That is for visitor parking. And the reason is because it's right on that corner. We don't want any vehicles parked on the street right there because of safety issues with the corner and with other things as well. And there is definitely no overflow parking into the adjacent church parking lot as well, as indicated in the first narrative. In addition,
Mr. Jarvis, I'm allowing a little extra time beyond the 3 minutes, I know, because you're speaking on behalf for the neighborhood group. But if we can start wrapping it up, I appreciate that.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the extra time. So the density is automatically addressed with the parking. The setbacks are there. The architecture, we've been informed that it has been changed. It has more of a ranch outline. We're still waiting for additional information on what it's going to look like. We hope it's not just black and white. It needs to, again, fit the neighborhood. And so we're working with them. We'll work with the developers on that. We know that it's set for the March 16th for vote. We'd ask that we would be pushed out at least a couple of weeks so we can get those plans and work with the development to address the actual architecture. I'm going to end there. There'll be maybe some other comments that we do appreciate the concern that the City Council has shown in this regard, because each one of you represent an area of this wonderful city that we live in, and we all want to keep it proper. There's one thing about modernization, and there's another thing of just going willy-nilly all over the place, and so we need to keep a handle on that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jarvis. The next blue card I have is from Charlotte Bunger, and it has that you're opposed to the project and wish to speak. Is that correct?
So Vice Mayor, council members, I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak. I'm not officially part of the neighborhood committee, but I've been a member of this neighborhood for 18 years. I've been a native of Arizona. I've lived in many communities, but I chose Mesa as my home, and I chose my house as the only house that I intend to reside in. I've invested a lot of money into improvements of my own property. So I understand that we want to keep levels of neighborhoods up. We don't want blight. We want progress. We've had KB Homes build beautiful homes in the former Albert Ranch, where Mr. and Mrs. Dana's former property was. We have Brianna Estates. But this particular project has bothered me because there's been a lot of misinformation and what I feel has been deceitful behavior. There's still a strong sentiment of deceit from the neighborhood regarding this project, and we have a lot of concerns. Mr. Jarvis mentioned a similar project at 32nd Street and Broadway, and that it's reduced number of units. Another thing that I want to draw out about that particular project is that the driveways to enter and exit the apartment complex, there's no neighboring houses with driveways there. This particular project, the driveway where those 36 residents are supposed to enter and exit, that driveway faces two driveways of homeowners. Imagine, if you will, trying to back out to get to your job, to get wherever, and you're having to compete with 30 to 60 cars coming in and out of there. It's gonna be very dangerous. It's not safe at all. So I know that you're not voting today, but I'm asking you to vote no on this project. It's not the right project for the neighborhood. It's just not the right project. And I appreciate your time. I'm gonna cut it short now so that everybody else can have an opportunity to speak to you, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bunger. Our next blue card is from Joshua New, and he opposes the project and wishes to speak. If you can come forward and state your name and address. I forgot to ask that before on the other speakers. And then you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you for listening to me. But my name's Josh New, and my address is 3419 East Hopi. And I also have another house that's on 32nd. It's 3153 East Inverness. That's one I'll be moving into. I'm currently remodeling, but I'm part of both communities because the HOA I live in is part of this, so one of the issues. So I sent out an email. I sent it to each one of your boxes. It's in regards to my issue that I have is more about the way that everything was handled as far as how it was presented, how everything was brought to us, how the HOAs weren't notified. If you look at the actual market report that Tim Boyle Design actually presented to everybody, there's a couple things. One is the actual area that he shows within that he showed that he actually covered was only 1,000 feet. It didn't show the half mile of the HOAs. It didn't show the mile of the registered communities. And so I've actually found 8 HOAs that were not notified at all and still aren't. I mean, there's HOAs that are notified but I don't even know if they've been notified today. So that's one of the things that I know that right now, because I'm part of the Harmony Park area and the Marlboro at Dana Ranch, we've been notified. But as far as the HOAs are concerned, they still haven't been notified. So I have a huge problem with that. The second thing that I have an issue with is when you start breaking down unit size, square footage, everything, there was about 13 exceptions that were done by the board in order to get this project to even go through. These 13 exceptions increases the lot ability by 10,000 square feet. Which basically means that the total density should have been, if it would have just done it based on the normal, regulations in the code that we currently have or the ordinances that are here, the whole entire unit would be at 25 units, not 40, because they would have lost at least 10,000 units, 10,000 square feet of the lot. Some of the things that they did were like, for example, the front, they gave, instead of it being 30 feet offset, they went to 20 foot offset, 10 foot offsets. I've got everything outlined. I'll send out emails to everybody so you guys can all have, you can all review it. The challenge that I have is Tim is a member of the board, which is kind of a problem for me because he should know the differences between what the ordinance calls, things like that. Don't get me wrong, I got a high school diploma. I'm not a kid that has a ton of knowledge. I'm just one of those guys that went through, researched everything, started looking through the information and realized that there are some huge concerns that I have for safety. The front of those properties are going to be sitting about, they said that there's going to be about 10 feet plus another 15 feet to the sidewalk. So we're talking on a 50-mile-an-hour road. Their front doors are right there. So 45 miles an hour, which is southern. There's 12 homes that are right on that front side. That could potentially, if you've got a kid that said that they're working professionals, I'm assuming that I'm a working professional. I had my first kid when I was, while I was a working professional, and then we kind of changed homes afterwards. So I don't think it's going to be uncommon to see kids that are 1, 2, 3 in these homes, and I don't think it's uncommon for us to see how close those homes are to the street and how scary it is for me as a parent to see what could potentially happen to those kids. So,
Mr. New?
Yes, sorry,
If you could
am I
just
out of
wrap
time?
up your comments. Your
Yeah,
3 minutes are up. So.
Oh, well, thank you for giving me my time. But anyways, that's basically it. The main thing is the zoning issues. I have found other projects that has HOA issues besides this one. There are of Tim's where he did not actually list any HOAs in regards to them. I've got them listed, and I actually had them sent to my email. So I will send another document to you guys to show you everything that I've compiled in regards to it. But I'm sure that this isn't a first-time offend, and so that's why I'm kind of trying to get everybody, so you guys can see what we're talking about and why we have issues with us not being communicated, or people communicating with us. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next blue card is Monty Hogue. Hogel, I'm sorry. And you wish to speak?
I do.
If you could please
Good
state
evening.
your name and address.
My name is
3 minutes.
Monty Hogel. I reside at 1421 South Creston Circle, just across the street from the Harmony Park. Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Appreciate your time. I'll make my remarks very short. I'm the one that probably could take responsibility for lighting the fire on this project, and we've already had Rob speak in behalf, but there's a couple of things that I would just like to add so that we make it perfectly clear that we had several issues when this project first hit. One was parking density, setbacks, and design. And we expressed our concerns, and we've had multiple meetings with the neighborhood and also with the developers and with city staff. And I think it's fair to say, so that there's not any misunderstanding, that the developers have been fairly good to work with. We've resolved the parking issues. We're not exactly totally happy with the density, but we've accepted it for what it is at this point. They have met our setback requirements that we wanted them to bring the setbacks within the zoning which they are applying for. And to my knowledge that has been done. And then the design, and I met with, I had a conversation with Mr. Jarman regarding that. They did not want, and they did not agree and would not agree to change the architecture of the building, of the project. However, in the study session, it was quite clear that you as council members saw what we as neighbors saw in the fact that this design just did not fit our neighborhood. And I'm standing here today mainly just to say thank you for your support. We continue, to my knowledge, during that session, the study session that came out about the good neighborhood, which is still an area that we are going to continue to work with the developers on. But we are really close. We appreciate the developers and them working with us, and that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hogle. And the last blue card I have for this item is for John Jarvis. And do you want to speak?
Yes, real quickly.
Okay, please, come forward.
Good evening. My name is John Jarvis. I live at 3144 East Hampton. I've been part of the committee in this whole process with Monty and my brother Rob. And I just simply want to, again, thank you for taking your time. And the study session was quite interesting. We support many things that you said. We're here representing the majority. I've received numerous texts today of people that weren't able to come, and we'll be reporting back to them. The main thing is we're just excited to see what is going to be introduced. We've been told things, we've been said these changes are coming. We're just anxious to see what those changes are, and if they're all in favor, we can start working and going forward. But I would ask that you postpone a vote from 2 weeks to give us time to work with the developers, which we've been doing. I don't know if this is going to be able to be resolved in 2 weeks. It could, but just plant that seed that we may need to get an extra 2 weeks to get this all working out, because we do want to have a project there, and we do want to work with the developers in that process.
Great, I appreciate your comments. We are voting tonight to start the public process, and then as you work forward, then, it's scheduled for May 16th, but it's possible.
So, Vice Mayor, can I ask staff if it's okay to, I think we need to clarify a few things on what the people talked about here representing the neighborhood. So architectural renderings, the right. Zoning, the notification, things that we've covered in the past, Nana, and I don't know if you want to cover it, but then I wrote down the zoning issues. Is it zoned for the amount of units that is being requested by the applicant? And is the developer to speak here or the architect? That would be my last question.
Okay, Vice Mayor, Council. The request before you is to rezone it from single residence 9 to multiple residence 3. So basically, they are upzoning it to a higher zoning designation. And one of the major discussions that we've had was the initial proposal that went before Planning and Zoning Board within the residential medium 3. There were certain setbacks that they were using the plan area development to basically get higher setbacks, and most of it now, through the conversation with the neighbors, have actually been reduced to meet the required setback within the RM3 zoning district. So that's what I think the neighbors were talking about, that they've been able to, through the conversation and discussions, that now the setback has actually been change to mimic or to really be in line with the residential medium 3 zoning district requirement. In terms of the neighborhood participation report, I want to put this into the record. If you look at our zoning ordinance, the requirement for informing HOAs, the code specifically says that as part of the citizen participation report, the project will notify affected HOAs. That's the only requirement. It doesn't specify the length or the radius. And it also says specifically a method. It doesn't specify that a letter will be sent to all the HOAs. It says a method. And so the method, the intent is to really find other effective way of notifying that. That's the generic. The only specific requirement is a 500 feet notification to property owners. That's what is legally mandatory for them to do that. So that's the second thing. In terms of the elevations, as I said to the council, they are still working with the neighbors. My understanding is they're still working on the final renderings, and they'll be going back to the neighbors to really discuss with them. So those are the three things, unless I missed something.
Vice Mayor. Also, there's been, and I don't know what the council wants to do, but I just want to suggest if we are going to set a new date for the public hearing, and that's really what council's doing, right? You're setting the hearing date. Right now, the action before you says May 16th. That's been brought up. That would be in 2 weeks from today. If the council wants, if it's the council's desire to set that out further, may I suggest we avoid June 6th, one, because we're going to have 2 council members out, and set it for June 20th. If that's the pleasure of the council to reschedule it, this could be, we could either do it now or we could do, but at some point there has to be a posting and a notification. But tonight, that's actually what you're doing. You're taking action to set the public hearing date for May 16th. If you think there needs to be more time, all I'm saying is don't choose June 6th. You would go to the next meeting, which would be June 20th. Thank you.
Council, discussion on this as far as setting the date for the vote?
I have a question, Vice Mayor. So I don't have a problem moving forward with the introduction. My question to staff is, can we do a continuance at May 16th if
You
we
would
so
just,
choose?
well, we could, or you could do tonight, you could set the public hearing date instead of May 16th, you could set it for June 20th, or we could, when can we, how late can we modify the date, all the way up till Thursday before, or to change the date on the public hearing, or continue it?
So Mayor and Council, if we set it for May 16th tonight, if you set it for that, it'll show up on that agenda. Now, what we've done sometimes is if we know it's a continuance and the applicant is okay with it, we'll actually put on the agenda that it is for continuance so that the public doesn't have to show up for a vote that's just going to be a continuance vote if we know a couple days ahead of time that it's a hard continuance. And so we have done that before. So we could always do that, but you always try to balance the desire to sort of put pressure on the developer to make changes, but also the demands on the neighborhood to have to show up and come to meetings that may just end up being continuances.
I think that's the concern, is what it does for the public to try to manage that anticipation of when the meeting will be, because obviously people come down and spend their time here, so.
So on our May 12th study session, would that?
You could do it tonight. You could specifically amend it to be tonight for June 20th, or we could do it at a later time in another meeting.
If it was on May 12th, which is a study session date on the Thursday, is that enough notice to change for the market as continuance?
So on May 12th, what we could do is if you knew it was going to be continued, we would just simply change we'd keep it on the agenda, but we would put on it for continuance only to the whatever date we would put. Yeah. And then, staff could notify the neighborhood so that they don't come down for something that is on the agenda only for continuance.
What is the deadline to make notification for continuance if we wanted to go that route?
Usually we would pick that Thursday that we would just
So
talked
the 12th
about.
would
Yeah,
be after.
because that's when the council's meeting and reviewing that agenda, and you could continue it beyond that. Again, it's just dealing with the public anticipation and figuring out, because it will be on the agenda. It'll just say to be continued.
Oh, I have a question. Is the developer here for comments?
Vice Mayor, yes.
I mean, would they like to speak in their behalf, because we're kind of discussing their zoning case? Is that okay, Vice Mayor?
Hello, my name is Aaron Little. I'm one of the developers, and I appreciate you guys' time on this. We've been working with the committee. We met with the neighborhood. We feel like we've made a lot of progress with the with what we're trying to put together. Our understanding, based upon the study session, is that we'll continue to work with the neighborhood committee, and then by Monday, we should have consensus on whether it's something that's acceptable and we can move forward to the vote on May 16th. Otherwise, we'd have to do a continuance at that point. And that's kind of, we've pushed this off several months now, and we're hoping that we can come to conclusion with it and have a vote on May 16th. That's what our desire is.
Any other discussion regarding that?
My preference is that we go ahead and go with the introduction, and then let's see what happens from there. And then just as Jim suggested, that we can do that if we need to do a continuance.
And we would just encourage the neighbors and developer to stay in communication with Nana
Right.
and the council member, so we can know, council, we can get a feedback on the 12th and know where things stand.
When will Councilmember Spilsbury, since she represents this district, will she be present on the 12th?
Yes.
Okay. I think that has, you know, I would like to hear from her. She's made a statement, and I'll read that in just a second, but I certainly depend on her advice, as she's been more closely involved with this than any of us. Councilmember Thompson.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Luna on moving forward. I think that allows the neighborhood and the developer more time to work together to find resolution. And because ultimately that's what we want, right? Is we want a win-win for everyone. And if we can get there, then great. If we can't, then as we approach the 16th, then we can ask for continuance prior to the meeting, once we know whether or not the community's coming together.
Councilmember Heredia? Okay. I agree. I think keeping the momentum and the conversation moving forward with a sense of urgency to get things resolved, I think could have benefit, and certainly we can reevaluate next week at study session. Councilmember Spilsbury will be returning then. I'd like to share a statement that she wrote before she had left on her trip, and she says, and regarding to item 6A, over the last couple of months, the neighbors surrounding the proposed Countryside Manor project have worked with the developer and have offered suggestions and recommendations for what would best serve the community. Feedback from the residents has already resulted in revisions to the project. I support the introduction of the zoning case with understanding both parties will continue to work together and reach a compromise that works for the developer and the community. So unless there's further discussion, I'll take a motion. Councilmember Freeman has made a motion to approve item 6A as introduction on our agenda, and seconded by Councilmember Luna. Please vote. That passes unanimously with the mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury absent. All right. I think that is about it for our consent agenda. And I think we're ready for adjournment. Can I have a- So moved. And all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.